Do it. Is this still connected? Or no, I took this with me, right?
Tu m'as raté la plaisir.
J'ai quoi? J'ai raté quoi?
James a fait une grosse merde.
Un gros caca, une grosse merde.
Oui.
Ah ouais, où? Ah ouais.
Dans le sac.
Oui.
Non.
Dans la couchée. Et coucher, c'est ça?
Coucher, oui.
Coucher?
Oh, non. Coucher?
Je dois acheter des couchers de bébé. I think diapers are couches.
Oh, really?
Couche something. Oh, des couches, des
And
couches.
fructose traverse.
Ah ouais, ça a traversé carrément. Ah ouais. Et how did you notice? Oh yeah.
This probably smells all in this room.
Oh yeah. The Lawrence nose isn't so bad then.
Well, the amount of poo.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Anybody would then.
Anybody would, even if you didn't have a nose.
Yeah. Your eyes would smell it. So do you want to do some French, buddy?
Qu'est-ce que Neo? What's all this water?
Do you want to do some French, bud?
No, I gotta do laundry. I gotta get all these shitty clothes out. Hey, make sure the floor is completely covered in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, don't pick the mats up and put them in the chair. I don't know whether you did it or your mum did it. But
make sure it's always
you
completely
got the other way.
covered.
But you go in there, it's shitting. Mats are missing.
Yeah. Oh. Ah. Great. So I don't think that we we haven't taken any notes really because there's nothing we found that we want to use today. Where's the fucking butt? Where'd I put my backpack? Oh, I don't have my backpack? Alright, I'll be back there. Alright, let's go. Alright, we're on page 33. Free Will, Sam Harris. We have quoted some stuff from Sam. Oh, you know what I should do instead of the desktop? We're gonna do macOS screen capture. No, we already have a. Which one do we want? That's much better, isn't it? great. That's good. Okay, so so we've quoted some stuff that is good and that can justify why, or that can explain that free will is an illusion. But then, in the last 10 pages, because it's only 66 pages, in the last 10 pages he starts talking about Daniel Dennett. And Daniel Dennett, and he disagrees with Daniel Dennett. But I'm more convinced by Daniel Dennett. Even by the way he talks about Daniel Dennett. Alright, let's go. So, we'll start at the bottom of page 32. This is not just... Alright, we'll start here. As we have begun to see, however, this feeling of freedom arises from our moment-to-moment ignorance of the prior causes of our thoughts and actions. The phrase free will describes what it feels like to identify with certain mental states as they arise in consciousness. Thoughts like, what should I get my daughter for her birthday? I know, I'll take her to a pet store and have her pick out some tropical fish. Convey the apparent reality of choices freely made. But from a deeper perspective, speaking both objectively and subjectively, thoughts simply arise unauthored and yet author our actions. This is not to say that conscious awareness and deliberative thinking serve no purpose. Indeed, much of our behavior depends on them. I might unconsciously shift in my seat, but I cannot unconsciously decide that the pain in my back warrants a trip to a physical therapist. And I talked somewhat extensively in the last stream. I disagreed with that. To do the latter, I must become aware of the pain and, that's true, and be consciously motivated to do something about it. And that I'm not convinced by. Perhaps it would be possible to build an insentient robot capable of these states, but in our case, certain behaviors seem to require the presence of conscious thought. And we, could you put this with Neo's stuff?
Where's this stuff?
On the shelf in the garage?
I'm not going to the garage. Just leave it there, Tony, go. Je vais...
Dehors. Okay. Perhaps it would be possible to build... Perhaps it would be possible to build an insentient robot capable of these states, but in our case, certain behaviors seem to require the presence of conscious thought. And we know that the brain systems that allow us to reflect upon our experience are different from those involved when we automatically react to stimuli. So consciousness in this sense is not inconsequential. And yet, the entire process of becoming aware of the pain in my back, thinking about it, and seeking a remedy for it results from processes of which I am completely unaware. Did I, the conscious person, create my pain? No, it simply appeared. Did I create the thoughts about it that led me to consider physical therapy? No, they too simply appeared. And then your consideration simply happened. But that's not what he says. This process of conscious deliberation, while different from unconscious reflex, offers no foundation for freedom of will. As Dan Dennett and many others have pointed out, people generally confuse determinism with fatalism. This gives rise to questions like, just remembered how many times I've heard this in my life, and it's just like, No, you didn't. You did no thinking. This gives rise to questions like, if everything is determined, why should I do anything? Why not just sit back and see what happens? Because you're part of the system? This is pure confusion. To sit back and see what happens is itself a choice that will produce its own consequences. It is also extremely difficult to do. Just try staying in bed all day waiting for something to happen. You will find yourself assailed by the impulse to get up and do something, which will require increasingly heroic efforts to resist. And the fact that our choices depend on prior causes does not mean that they don't matter. If I had not decided to write this book, it wouldn't have written itself. My choice to write it was unquestionably the primary cause of its coming into being. And then there was something that, of course, preceded that choice. Decisions, intentions, efforts, goals, willpower, etc. are causal states of the brain leading to specific behaviors, and behaviors lead to outcomes in the world. Human choice, therefore, is as important as fanciers of free will believe. But the next choice you make will come out of the darkness of prior causes that you, the conscious witness of your experience, did not bring into being. Therefore, while it is true to say that a person would have done otherwise if he had chosen to do otherwise, this does not deliver the kind of free will that most people seem to cherish, because a person's choices merely appear in his mind as though sprung from the void. From the perspective of your conscious awareness, you are no more responsible for the next thing you think, and therefore do, than you are for the fact that you are born into this world. Let's say your life has gone off track. You used to be very motivated, inspired by your opportunities, and physically fit, but now you are lazy, easily discouraged, and overweight. How'd you get this way? You might be able to tell a story about how your life unraveled, but you cannot truly account for why you let it happen. And now you want to escape this downward trend and change yourself through an act of will. You begin reading self-help books. You change your diet and join a gym. You decide to go back to school, but after 6 months of effort, you are no closer to living the life you want than you were before. The books failed to make an impact on you. Your diet and fitness regime proved impossible to maintain, and you got bored with school and quit. Why did you encounter so many obstacles in yourself? You have no idea. You tried to change your habits, but your habits appear to be stronger than you are. Most of us know what it is like to fail in this way, and these experiences are not even slightly suggestive of freedom of will. But you woke up this morning feeling even greater resolve. Enough is enough. Now you have a will of steel. Before stepping out of bed, you had a brilliant idea for a website, and the discovery that the domain name was available for only $10 has filled you with confidence. You are now an entrepreneur. You share the idea with several smart people, and they think it is guaranteed to make you rich. The wind is at your back, your sails are full, and you are attacking furiously. I don't know what attacking means. But also, I don't care to add it to my vocabulary. You are attacking furiously. The wind is at your back, your sails are full. Oh, maybe it's a sailing term. As it turns out, a friend of yours is also a close friend of Tim Ferriss, the famous lifestyle coach and fitness guru. Ferriss offers to consult with you about your approach to diet and exercise. You find this meeting extremely helpful, and afterward, you discover a reservoir of discipline in yourself that you didn't know was there. Over the next 4 months, you swap 20 pounds of fat for 20 pounds of muscle. You weigh the same, but you are fully transformed. Your friends can't believe what you have accomplished. Even your enemies begin to ask you for advice. You feel entirely different about your life, and the role that discipline, choice, and effort have played in your resurrection cannot be denied. But how can you account for your ability to make these efforts today and not a year ago? Where did this idea for a website come from? It just appeared in your mind. Did you, as the conscious agent you feel yourself to be, create it? If so, why not just create the next one right now? That's what I fucking thought. How can you explain the effect that Tim Ferriss's advice had on you? How can you explain your ability to respond to it? If you pay attention to your inner life, you will see that the emergence of choices, efforts, and intentions is a fundamentally mysterious process. Yes, you can decide to go on a diet. I'm not recording. Yes, you can decide to go on a diet, and we know a lot about the variables that will enable you to stick to it, but you cannot know why you were finally able to adhere to this discipline when all your previous attempts failed. You might have a story to tell about why things were different this time around, but it would be nothing more than a post hoc description of events that you did not control. Yes, you can do what you want, but you cannot account for the fact that your wants are effective in one case and not in another. And you certainly can't choose your wants in advance. You wanted to lose weight for years. Then you really wanted to. What's the difference? Whatever it is, it's not a difference that you brought into being. You are not in control of your mind because you, as a conscious agent, are only part of your mind, living at the mercy of other parts. So, do I agree with that? I don't think I would have, but increasingly I don't think there's any use in saying that you are a part of your mind. And it's a comment I made yesterday, which is that anytime we talk about you, when you use the word I, when someone is talking to you and uses the word you, it is not only the conscious self that's like feels spoken to and is processing and responding. So, yeah, it doesn't really... You are not just a part of your mind. Your experience is just a part of the processes happening. But you are the whole sit stem. Okay? You are not in control of your mind. So, you are not in control of your mind because you are your mind. Okay? Your mind is not a thing that you can then control. You are your mind, okay? He says because you are only part of your mind, living at the mercy of other parts. But no, and in fact, in any given moment, you could say that you're part X, or you're that it, and you're at the mercy of this other it. But at another moment, maybe it would be, maybe you experienced more the other it, and maybe in this case it was at the mercy of the former. You can do what you decide to do, but you cannot decide what you will decide to do. Of course, you can create a framework in which certain decisions are more likely than others. You can, for instance, purge your house of all sweets, making it very unlikely that you will eat dessert later in the evening. But you cannot know why you were able to submit to such a framework today when you weren't yesterday. So it's not that willpower isn't important, or that it is destined to be undermined by biology. Willpower is itself a biological phenomenon. You can change your life and yourself through effort and discipline. But you have whatever capacity for effort and discipline you have in this moment, and not a scintilla more. Scintilla more or less. You are either lucky in this department or you aren't, and you cannot make your own luck. Many people believe that human freedom consists in our ability to do what, upon reflection, we believe we should do. Alright, we got a sentence coming here. This sounds like the start of a good sentence. Alright. Let's do that previous one as well. We're just gonna leave it at that. He goes on to say, so I'll read the whole thing. Many. Oh, I see. Many people believe that human freedom consists in our ability to do what, upon reflection, we believe we should do, which often means overcoming our short-term desires and following our long-term goals or better judgment. This is certainly an ability that people possess, to a greater or lesser degree, and which other animals appear to lack. Okay, yeah, like long-term goals. And there's less hierarchy and competition of its and stuff, because there are just fewer its. All right. I mean, that's why there's less competition, and then there's also less hierarchy, and okay. This is certainly an ability that people possess to a greater or lesser degree, and which other animals appear to lack, but it is nevertheless a capacity of our minds that has unconscious roots. You have not built your mind. I mean, we're just gonna try to find whatever phrasing gets it through your thick fucking skulls, right? And in moments in which you seem to build it, when you make an effort to change yourself, to acquire knowledge, or to perfect a skill, the only tools at your disposal are those that you have inherited from moments past. What was that other thing I want to underline? Oh yeah, many people following on better judgment, overcoming, we should do, blah, blah, blah. You have not built your mind. Choices, efforts, intentions, and reasoning influence our behavior, but they are themselves part of a chain of causes that precede conscious awareness and over which we exert no ultimate control. Yeah, I think he gets it wrong here. That's bad phrasing, but I think I'm still going to write that down. Because I think it can be adjusted to be good. My choices matter, and there are paths toward making wiser ones, but I cannot choose what I choose. And if it ever appears that I do, for instance after going back and forth between two options, I do not choose to choose what I choose. There is a regress here that always ends in darkness. I must take a first step, or a last one, for reasons that are bound to remain inscrutable. Many people believe that this problem of regress is a false one. No, I think that's right. Unless you're gonna tell me Dennett thinks it's a false one. Oh, what do you mean it's a false one? That it's that there's no regress thing at all, or that it's not a problem. Certain compatibilists insist that freedom of will is synonymous with the idea that one could have thought or acted differently. However, to say that I could have done otherwise is merely to think the thought, I could have done otherwise after doing whatever I in fact did. Yeah. This is an empty affirmation. Okay, I'm with you there, but certain compatibilists insist that freedom of will is synonymous with the idea that one could have thought or acted differently. I'm not actually sure what to do with this sentence relative to the other stuff. I mean, the sentence is fine. Certain compatibilists insist that freedom of will. Yeah, that's one way that free will is defined. That whatever was done, another different thing could have been done. Et alors? I don't know. It confuses hope for the future with an honest account of the past. What I will do next and why remains at bottom a mystery, one that is fully determined by the prior state of the universe and the laws of nature, including the contributions of chance. To declare my freedom is tantamount to saying, I don't know why I did it, but it's the sort of thing I tend to do, and I don't mind doing it. Right. Alright, you know what? Because I think I'm going to share this document with people that don't really get the will illusion. But I don't want them to go to the extreme. You know, like, oh, I have no control, whatever. So I want to write that sentence, choices matter. I guess I didn't. Choices matter. My choices matter. Page 39. You know what? You know what? You know what? I'm going off. The next time someone in my group, Risers, refers to our meetings as a class, because that was okay in the first few months. But now especially with the stuff I'm still fucking explaining, the only reason it's a class is because you have done none of the work. I am not your teacher. I am soliciting your help and willing to teach you some things so that you can help me. Okay? My role is not as your teacher. I want us to be partners. So, like, I think they're out here thinking, oh, yeah, that's normal that Eris prepares this document and then I sit there and fucking listen to it. No, not normal. You should have a document like this. I'm doing will right now. Someone else should be doing rationality. I mean, I'm not asking you to do as much as I do since I'm dedicating myself to it. Alright, we're not going to go off. I'm sorry, I'm being silly. We are going to make that point, though. Alright, we'll finish this chapter and then we'll say goodnight. Yeah. Alright, one of the most refreshing ideas to come out of existentialism, perhaps the only one, why do you say that? Is that we are free. I mean, it's the main idea. What do you mean, perhaps the only one? It is the main idea, and yes, it is refreshing. One of the most refreshing ideas to come out of existentialism, perhaps the only one, is that we are free to interpret and reinterpret the meaning of our lives. You can consider your first marriage, which ended in divorce, to be a failure. Or you can view it as a circumstance that caused you to grow in ways that were crucial to your future happiness. Does this freedom of interpretation require free will? No. Period. I would have written, no, you dumb fuck. It simply suggests that different ways of thinking have different consequences. Some thoughts are depressing and disempowering. Others inspire us. We can pursue any line of thought we want. But our choice is the product of prior events that we did not bring into being. Take a moment to think about the context in which your next decision will occur. You did not pick your parents or the time and place of your birth. You didn't choose your gender or most of your life experiences. You had no control whatsoever over your genome or the development of your brain. And now your brain is making choices on the basis of preferences and beliefs that have been hammered into it over a lifetime by your genes, your physical development since the moment you were conceived, and the interactions you have had with other people, events, and ideas. Where is the freedom in this? Yes, you are free to do what you want even now. But where did those desires come from? Writing for the New York Times, the philosopher Eddie Namias criticized arguments of the sort I've presented here. Many philosophers, including me, understand free will as a set of capacities for imagining future courses of action, deliberating about one's reasons for choosing them, planning one's actions in light of this deliberation, and controlling actions in the face of competing desires. We act of our own free will to the extent that we have the opportunity to exercise these capacities without unreasonable external or internal pressure. We are responsible for our actions roughly to the extent that we possess these capacities and we have opportunities to exercise them. There is no question that human beings can imagine and plan for the future, weigh competing desires, etc., and that losing these capacities would greatly diminish us. External and internal pressures of various kinds can be present or absent while a person imagines, yo, Luke, how is it going? Are you Sam Harris? Let me start that sentence again. External and internal pressures of various kinds can be present or absent while a person imagines, plans, and acts. And such pressures determine our sense of whether he is morally responsible for his behavior. Hold on one more time. Let me turn the light on actually and put my glasses on. I was thinking about Luke, wondering whether it was someone I knew. One more time. External and internal pressures of various kinds can be present or absent while a person imagines, plans, and acts. And such pressures determine our sense of whether he is morally responsible for his behavior. However, these phenomena have nothing to do with free will. For instance, in my teens and early 20s, I was a devoted student of the martial arts. I practiced incessantly and taught classes in college. Recently, I began training again after a hiatus of more than 20 years. Both the cessation and the renewal of my interest in martial arts seem to be pure expressions of the freedom that Namias attributes to me. I have been under no unreasonable external or internal pressure. I have done exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to stop training and I stopped. I wanted to start again and now I train several times a week. All this has been associated with conscious thought and acts of apparent self-control. However, when I look for the psychological cause of my behavior, I find it utterly mysterious. Why did I stop training 20 years ago? Well, certain things just became more important to me. But why did they become more important to me? And why precisely then? And to that degree? And why did my interest in martial arts suddenly reemerge after decades of hibernation? I can consciously weigh the effects of certain influences. For instance, I recently read Rory Miller's excellent book, Meditations on Violence. But why did I read this book? I have no idea. And why did I find it compelling? And why was it sufficient to provoke action on my part, if indeed it was the proximate cause of my behavior? And why so much action? I'm now practicing 2 martial arts and also training with Miller and other self-defense experts. What in hell is going on here? Of course, I could tell a story about why I'm doing what I'm doing, which would amount to my telling you why I think such training is a good idea, why I enjoy it, etc. But the actual explanation for my behavior is hidden from it. And it is perfectly obvious that I, as the conscious witness of my experience, am not the deep cause of it. After reading the previous paragraph, some of you will think, that Miller book sounds interesting, and you will buy it. Some will think no such thing. Of those who buy the book, some will find it extremely useful. Others might put it down without seeing the point. Others will place it on the shelf and forget to read it. Where is the freedom in any of this? You, as the conscious agent who reads these words, are in no position to determine which of these bins you might fall into. And if you decide to switch bins, I wasn't going to buy the book, but now I will, just to spite you. You cannot account for that decision either. You will do whatever it is you do, and it is meaningless to assert that you could have done otherwise. This is a good chapter, though. Might the truth be bad for us? Because, yeah, especially people don't get what it... I mean, we might as well just finish the book, right? You still with me, Luke? Should we finish the book? Alright, might the truth be bad for us? Many people worry that free will is a necessary illusion, and that without it we will fail to live creative and fulfilling lives. This concern isn't entirely unjustified. One study found that having subjects read an argument against the existence of free will made them more likely to cheat on a subsequent exam. Another found such subjects to be less helpful and more aggressive. This goes in, right? It is surely conceivable that knowing or emphasizing certain truths about the human mind could have unfortunate psychological and or cultural consequences. Yeah, he is. He is. But in this book, although we generally agree, and he's more correct than the population, Daniel Dennett may have some better things to say. But I mean, most of this document is good stuff. Oh no, all of the document is good stuff. All of the stuff that I'm citing. You know what? He is based. I take back adding any nuancer to that. However, I'm not especially worried about degrading the morality of my readers by publishing this book. Speaking from personal experience, I think that losing the sense of free will has only improved my ethics. Yeah. By increasing my feelings of compassion and forgiveness and diminishing my sense of entitlement to the fruits of my own good luck. Yeah. Is such a state of mind always desirable? Probably not. If I were teaching a self-defense class for women, I would consider it quite counterproductive to emphasize that all human behavior, including a woman's response to physical attack, is determined by a prior state of the universe, and that all rapers are, at bottom, unlucky, being themselves victims of prior causes that they did not create. Yeah, I probably wouldn't. Even me, I definitely wouldn't say that. There are scientific, ethical, and practical truths appropriate to every occasion. And an injunction like, just gouge the bastard's eyes, surely has its place. There is no contradiction here. Our interests in life are not always served by viewing people and things as collections of atoms, but this doesn't negate the truth or utility of physics. Losing a belief in free will has not made me fatalistic. In fact, it has increased my feelings of freedom. My hopes, fears, and neuroses seem less personal and indelible. There is no telling how much I might change in the future. Just as one wouldn't draw a lasting conclusion about oneself on the basis of a brief experience of indigestion, one needn't do so on the basis of how one has thought or behaved for vast stretches of time in the past. Yeah. Let's write that one down as well. Yeah. A creative change of inputs to the system, learning new skills, forming new relationships, adopting new habits of attention, may radically transform one's life. Becoming sensitive to the background causes of one's thoughts and feelings can, paradoxically, allow for greater creative control over one's life. It is one thing to bicker with your wife because you're in a bad mood. It is another to realize that your mood and behavior have been caused by low blood sugar. This understanding reveals you to be a biochemical puppet, of course, but it also allows you to grab hold of one of your strings. A bite of food may be all that your personality requires. Getting behind our conscious thoughts and feelings can allow us to steer a more intelligent course through our lives, while knowing, of course, that we are ultimately being steered. That's a really nice line, isn't it? I don't know that I'm going to put that in the doc. That's really good. Alright, let's just finish the book, right? Okay, moral responsibility. We have moral responsibility. Then like a couple pages on politics, and then the conclusion. Alright, let's go. Moral responsibility. The belief in free will has given us both the religious conception of sin and our commitment to retributive justice. Retributive justice. The U.S. Supreme Court has called free will a universal and persistent foundation for our system of law, distinct from a deterministic view of human conduct that is inconsistent with the underlying precepts of our criminal justice system. Wow. Any intellectual developments that threatened free will would seem to put the ethics of punishing people for their bad behavior in question. The great worry, of course, is that an honest discussion of the underlying causes of human behavior appears to leave no room for moral responsibility. If we view people as neuronal weather patterns, how can we coherently speak about right and wrong or good and evil? These notions seem to depend upon people being able to freely choose how to think and act. But they shouldn't be. These notions seem to depend upon people being able to freely choose how to think and act. And if we remain committed to seeing people as people, we must find some notion of personal responsibility that fits the facts. Happily, we can. What does it mean to take responsibility for an action? Yesterday I went to the market. I was fully clothed, did not steal anything, and did not buy anchovies. To say that I was responsible for my behavior is simply to say that what I did was sufficient. To say that I was responsible for my behavior is simply to say that what I did was sufficiently in keeping with my thoughts, intentions, beliefs, and desires to be considered an extension of them. If I had found myself standing in the market naked, intent upon stealing as many tins of anchovies as I could carry, my behavior would be totally out of character. I would feel that I was not in my right mind, or that I was otherwise not responsible for my actions. Judgments of responsibility depend on the overall complexion of one's mind, not on the metaphysics of mental cause and effect. There you go. That's good. Consider the following examples of human violence. 1. A 4-year-old boy was playing with his father's gun and killed a young woman. The gun had been kept loaded and unsecured in a dresser drawer. 2. Consider the following examples of human violence. Have you considered that? A 4-year-old boy was playing with his father's gun and killed a young woman. The gun had been kept loaded and unsecured in a dresser drawer. Okay? So we're all like, oh, poor kid. Fuck that dad, bro. Alright. Okay, we all agree. 2. A 12-year-old boy who had been the victim of continual physical and emotional abuse, took his father's gun and intentionally shot and killed a young woman because she was teasing him. Now, here's where you and I might start to diverge. 3. A 25-year-old man who had been the victim of continual abuse as a child intentionally shot and killed his girlfriend because she left him for another man. 4. A 25-year-old man who had been raised by wonderful parents and never abused intentionally shot and killed a young woman he had never met just for the fun of it. Now we reconverge. We all agree. If that's the case, I mean, maybe it's just reporting that. But if that's really the case, they did that for the fun. Evil. I mean, that's the only kind of real evil. People who get pleasure out of the harm. That's what I say. 5. A 25-year-old man who had been raised by wonderful parents and never abused intentionally shot and killed a young woman he had never met just for the fun of it. An MRI of the man's brain revealed a tumor the size of a golf ball in his medial prefrontal cortex. Size of a golf ball? I don't have a golf ball. Anyway. Imagine this, where's the camera? Imagine this whole bit. Boom, tumor. This whole, like, area, right? Boom, tumor. A region responsible for the control of emotion and behavioral impulses. In each case, a young woman died, and in each case, her death was the result of events arising in the brain of another human being. But the degree of moral outrage we feel depends on the background conditions described in each case. We suspect that a 4-year-old child cannot truly kill someone on purpose, and that the intentions of a 12-year-old do not run as deep as those of an adult. In cases 1 and 2, we know that the brain of the killer is not fully matured, and that not all the responsibilities of personhood have yet been conferred. I wasn't really paying attention. He's 12 years old. Okay, so maybe we didn't. Maybe you and I, we still like, 12-year-old? I don't know. In case, the history of abuse and the precipitating circumstance in case 3 seem to mitigate the man's guilt based on our moral intuitions. This was a crime of passion committed by a person who had himself suffered at the hands of others. In 4, there has been no abuse, and the motive brands the perpetrator a psychopath. Case 5 involves the same psychopathic behavior and motive, but a brain tumor somehow changes the moral calculus entirely. Given its location, it seems to divest the killer of all responsibility for his crime, and it works this miracle even if the man's subjective experience was identical to that of the psychopath in case 4. And that's what I'm so glad I specified. I said, if that's really the reason, because he might just be saying that, but if that's really the reason. All right. So given its location, the location of the tumor, it seems to divest the killer of all responsibility for his crime. And it works this miracle even if the man's subjective experience was identical to that of the psychopath in case 4. For the moment we understand that his feelings had a physical cause, a brain tumor, we cannot help seeing him as a victim of his own biology. This live is about the critical thinking revolution. Learning that about how the mind works and how we can do better. How can we make sense of these gradations of moral responsibility when brains and their background influences are in every case and to exactly the same degree the real cause of a woman's death? One more time. How can we make sense of these gradations of moral responsibility when brains and their background influences are in every case and to exactly the same degree the real cause of a woman's death? Nice. We will do better. We will do better. And And an elite few are going to be doing better even in my lifetime. And then within a couple of generations, we'll get the whole world with a little bit self-aware, understanding, oh, I'm kind of full of shit. My judgments can't really be trusted. Oh, I'm just a monkey, actually. But we can work together, and once we have that humility, we realize that we're all just goofballs. We can do better. We can put systems in place, and when someone tells us we're wrong, we're more likely to hear it. Page 52. We need not have any illusions that a causal agent lives within the human mind to recognize that certain people are dangerous. What we condemn most in another person is the conscious intention to do harm, which is wrong. Degrees of guilt can still be judged by reference to the facts of a case. The personality of the accused, his prior offenses, his patterns of association with others, his use of intoxicants, his confessed motives with regard to the victim, etc. If a person's actions seem to have been entirely out of character, Sir? Hey, I'm almost done, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, actually, let's keep that window open. Oh. Okay, let's go. All right. Oh my God. All right. What we condemn most in another person is the conscious intention to do harm. Degrees of guilt can still be judged by reference to the facts of a case. The personality of the accused, his prior offenses, his patterns of association with others, his use of intoxicants, his confessed motives with regard to the victim, etc. If a person's actions seem to have been entirely out of character, this might influence our view of the risk he now poses to others. If the accused appears unrepentant and eager to kill again, we need entertain no notions of free will to consider him a danger to society. Oh, okay. Okay, I take back saying something was stupid. What we condemn most in another person is the conscious intention to do harm. Okay, for condemnation, alright, yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's our natural instinct, and that's fair enough, I guess? I don't know. Why is the conscious decision to do another person harm particularly blameworthy? Because what we do subsequent to conscious planning tends to most fully reflect the global properties of our minds. And that's what matters. It isn't about whether it was conscious or not. It's like what he said earlier about the complexion. What did he say? Judgments of responsibility depend on the overall complexion of one's mind, not on the metaphysics of mental cause and effect. So, because what we do subsequent to conscious planning tends to most fully reflect the global properties of our minds, our beliefs, desires, goals, prejudices, etc. If, after weeks of deliberation, library research, and debate with your friends, you still decide to kill the king, well then killing the king reflects the sort of person you really are. The point is not that you are the ultimate and independent cause of your actions. The point is that, for whatever reason, you have the mind of a regicide. Regicide? Certain criminals must be incarcerated to prevent them from harming other people. The moral justification for this is entirely straightforward. Everyone else will be better off this way. Yeah, mother and father. Certain criminals must be incarcerated to prevent them from harming other people. The moral justification for this is entirely straightforward. Everyone else will be better off this way. Dispensing with the illusion of free will allows us to focus on the things that matter: assessing risk, protecting innocent people, deterring crime, etc. However, certain moral intuitions begin to relax the moment we take a wider picture of causality into account. Once we recognize that even the most terrifying predators are, in a very real sense, unlucky to be who they are, the logic of hating, as opposed to fearing, them begins to unravel. Once again, even if you believe that every human being harbors an immortal soul, the picture does not change. Anyone born with the soul of a psychopath has been profoundly unlucky. Why does the brain tumor in case 5 change our view of the situation so dramatically? One reason is that its influence has been visited upon a person who, we must assume, would not otherwise behave in this way. But the tumor and its effects seem adventitious, and this makes the perpetrator appear to be purely a victim of biology. Of course, if we couldn't cure his condition, we would still need to lock him up to prevent him from committing further crimes, but we would not hate him or condemn him as evil. Here is one front on which I believe our moral intuitions must change. The more we understand the human mind in causal terms, the harder it becomes to draw a distinction between cases like 4 and 5. So the one where he had a perfect childhood and then intentionally killed someone just for the fun of it, and then the other one, he had a perfect childhood and then he intentionally killed someone just for the fun of it, and then we did an MRI and saw he had a tumor. The more we understand the human mind in causal terms, the harder it becomes to draw a distinction between cases like 4 and 5. The men and women on death row have some combination of bad genes, bad parents, bad environments, and bad ideas, and the innocent, of course, have supremely bad luck. Which of these quantities exactly were they responsible for? No human being is responsible for his genes or his upbringing, yet we have every reason to believe that these factors determine his character. Our system of justice should reflect an understanding that any of us could have been dealt a very different hand in life. In fact, it seems immoral not to recognize just how much luck is involved in morality itself. To see how fully our moral intuitions must shift, consider what would happen if we discovered a cure for human evil. Imagine that every relevant change in the human brain could now be made cheaply, painlessly, and safely. In fact, the cure could be put directly into the food supply like vitamin D. Evil would become nothing more than a nutritional deficiency. If we imagine that a cure for evil exists, we can see that our retributive impulse, or our impulse for retribution, is morally flawed. Consider, for instance, the prospect of withholding the cure for evil from a murderer as part of his punishment. Would this make any sense at all? What could it possibly mean to say that a person deserves to have this treatment withheld? What if the treatment was available prior to his crime? Would he still be responsible for his actions? It seems far more likely that those who had been aware of his case would be indicted for negligence. Would it make any sense to deny surgery to the man in case 5 as a punishment if we knew that the brain tumor was the actual cause of his violence? Of course not. The implications of this seem inescapable. The urge for retribution depends upon our not seeing the underlying causes of human behavior. Now, if you want someone who's really good for this, David Eagleman, and you don't have to read a whole book. He's got an article in The Atlantic from well, he's maybe written another one since then. Actually, he has TED Talks where he talks about this. But anyway, he had an article in The Atlantic like 15 years ago, big deal, called The Brain on Trial. So Google The Brain on Trial, and Eagleman's going to say basically the same good stuff. All right, 10 more pages. Yeah, we can do it. We're going to make it through. All right, and we've got a bad student of history, maybe Knock Knock, Luke, tons of friends to motivate us through it. All right. Hey, Mom, my window's open. The more we understand the human mind and cause blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, where were we? Okay, despite our attachment to the notion of free will, most of us know that disorders of the brain can trump the best intentions of the mind. This shift in understanding represents progress toward a deeper, more consistent, and more compassionate view of our common humanity. And we should note that this is... thanks, bro. Thank you very much. And we should note that... Hey, Mom, someone just subscribed because they love the sound of your voice. And we should note that this is progress away from religious metaphysics. Few concepts have offered greater scope for human cruelty than the idea of an immortal soul that stands independent of all material influences ranging from genes to economic systems. Within a religious framework, a belief in free will supports the notion of sin, which seems to justify not only harsh punishment in this life, but eternal punishment in the next. And yet, ironically, one of the fears attending our progress in science is that a more complete understanding of ourselves will dehumanize us. Viewing human beings as natural phenomena need not damage our system of criminal justice. If we could incarcerate earthquakes and hurricanes for their crimes, we would build prisons for them as well. We fight emerging epidemics and even the occasional wild animal without attributing free will to them. Clearly, we can respond intelligently to the threat posed by dangerous people without lying to ourselves about the ultimate origins of human behavior. We will still need a criminal justice system that attempts to accurately assess guilt and innocence along with the future risks that the guilty pose to society. But the logic of punishing people will come undone unless we find that punishment is an essential component of deterrence or rehabilitation. It must be admitted, however, that the issue of retribution is a tricky one. In a fascinating article in The New Yorker, Jared Diamond writes of the high price we sometimes pay when our desire for vengeance goes unfulfilled. He compares the experience of two people: his friend Daniel, a New Guinea Highlander who avenged the death of a paternal uncle, and his late father-in-law, who had the opportunity to kill the man who murdered his entire family during the Holocaust, but opted instead to turn him over to the police. After spending only a year in jail, the killer was released. The consequences of taking revenge in the first case and foregoing it in the second could not have been starker. While there is much to be said against the vendetta culture of the New Guinea Highlands, Daniel's revenge brought him exquisite relief, whereas Diamond's father-in-law spent the last 60 years of his life tormented by regret and guilt. Clearly, vengeance answers to a powerful psychological need in many of us. We are deeply disposed to perceive people as the authors of their actions, to hold them responsible for the wrongs they do us, and to feel that these transgressions must be punished. Often, the only punishment that seems appropriate is for the perpetrator of a crime to suffer or forfeit his life. It remains to be seen how a scientifically informed system of justice might steward these impulses. Clearly, a full account of the causes of human behavior should attenuate our natural response to injustice, at least to some degree. I doubt, for instance, that Diamond's father-in-law would have suffered the same anguish if his family had been trampled by an elephant or laid low by cholera. Similarly, we can assume that his regret would have been significantly eased if he had learned that his family's killer had lived a flawlessly moral life until a virus began ravaging his medial prefrontal cortex. However, it may be that a sham form of retribution would still be moral, even necessary, if it led people to behave better than they otherwise would. Whether it is useful to emphasize the punishment of certain criminals rather than their containment or rehabilitation is a question for social and psychological science. But it seems clear that a desire for retribution arising from the idea that each person is the free author of his thoughts and actions rests on a cognitive and emotional illusion and perpetuates a moral one. I'm going to pause for a second. Bad student of history. So here's what we're doing. Here's what we're trying to do. So we've got this thing, right? we have the Warsaw Illusions. We want to tell people, look, here are the 6 things that minds get wrong about minds. Okay? I might want to put the blank slate illusion and then maybe an emotion set of illusions. But this is what it's at right now. Now, people disbelieving, deconstructing things such as their concepts of free will and blah 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 is the first step toward what I call critical recognition, which is what you need for critical thinking. You have to first sort of recognize certain facts about how the mind works, and then also be able to recognize when the mind isn't working. So you have to know, some cognitive biases. Oh, hey, this is an example of the halo effect. Oh, hey, this is an example of the sunk cost fallacy, etc., etc. All right, anyway. So for the record, there's the context. So right now we're preparing some things in words other than my own to sort of explain the will illusion and to deconstruct it. One way of viewing the connection between free will and moral responsibility is to note that we generally attribute these qualities to people only with respect to actions that punishment might deter. I cannot hold you responsible for behaviors that you could not possibly control. If we made sneezing illegal, for instance, some number of people would break the law no matter how grave the consequences. Oh, and sometimes I fart. A behavior like kidnapping, however, seems to require conscious deliberation and sustained effort at every turn. Hence, it should admit of deterrence. A behavior like kidnapping, however, seems to require conscious deliberation and sustained effort at every turn. Hence, it should admit of deterrence. Hence, it should admit of deterrence. I don't know what that means. Alright, either chat tell me what that means. Let's ask chat. Oh yeah, either way chat's gonna tell us. Alright. Hence, it should admit of deterrence. No, I am a philosopher. That's the title I use. Absolutely, the key phrase is hence it should admit of is a formal way of saying allow for, be susceptible to. Ah, okay. All right, excellent. If the threat of punishment could cause you to stop... Oh, okay. A behavior like kidnapping, however, seems to require conscious deliberation and sustained effort at every turn. Hence, it should be susceptible to deterrence. If the threat of punishment could cause you to stop doing what you are doing, your behavior falls squarely within conventional notions of free will and moral responsibility. It may be true that strict punishment, rather than mere containment or rehabilitation, is necessary to prevent certain crimes. But punishing people purely for pragmatic reasons would be very different from the approach we currently take. Of course, if punishing bacteria and viruses would prevent the emergence of pandemic diseases, we would mete out justice to them as well. A wide variety of human behaviors can be modified by punishments and incentives, and attributing responsibility to people in these contexts is quite natural. It may even be unavoidable as a matter of convention. As the psychologist Daniel Wegner points out, the idea of free will can be a tool for understanding human behavior. To say that someone freely chose to squander his life savings at the poker table is to say that he had every opportunity to do otherwise and that nothing about what he did was inadvertent. He played poker not by accident or while in the grip of delusion, but because he wanted to, intended to, and decided to moment after moment. For most purposes, it makes sense to ignore the deep causes of desires and intentions, genes, synaptic potentials, etc., and focus instead on the conventional outlines of the person. I want to note another book, and it's a big one, but it also comes with a big recommendation. Behave. Obviously, I've touched this a lot. Behave by Robert Sapolsky, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst. Oliver Sacks. This Oliver Sacks, maybe you know this title, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and Other Clinical Tales, reviews Behave, saying one of the best, he's just reviewing Sapolsky, one of the best scientist writers of our time. I thought it was going to be about the book, but I guess it is. Okay. You know what? I don't think we have that. We haven't actually read this. I don't think we have. We haven't actually read this. Let's put this on the list, eh? Let's give it a 4. Alright, great. Alright. Okay, 6 more pages and then we are done. Oh, you know Sapolsky? Sweet. Oh, thank you, bro. Yes. You should see the list of things that have been read. Oh, I think I have that up actually. Alright. We got some bangers in here, bro. These are some real. I'm gonna leave this on the screen for you. This one's this one, and we're Thinking Fast and Slow, and this one are the bangest of the bangers. Oh, and this one. And this one's good. This one was a disappointment. Anyway, where were we? He played poker, blah blah. For most purposes, it makes sense to ignore the deep causes of desires and intentions, genes, synaptic potentials, etc., and focus instead on the conventional outlines of the person. We do this when thinking about our own choices and behaviors, because it's the easiest way to organize our thoughts and actions. Why did I order beer instead of wine? Because I prefer beer. Why do I prefer it? I don't know, but I generally have no need to ask. Knowing that I like beer more than wine is all I need to know to function in a restaurant. Whatever the reason, I prefer one taste to the other. Is there freedom in this? None whatsoever. Would I magically reclaim my freedom if I decided to spite my preference and order wine instead? No, because the roots of this intention would be as obscure as the preference itself. Last chapter, and then the conclusion, very exciting. And then this one is knocked out, bro. This one's about to be knocked out. Okay. Politics. For better or worse, dispelling the illusion of free will has political implications because liberals and conservatives are not equally enthralled to it. Liberals tend to understand that a person can be lucky or unlucky in all matters relevant to success. Conservatives, however, often make a religious fetish of individualism. Many seem to have absolutely no awareness of how fortunate one must be to succeed at anything in life, no matter how hard one works. One must be lucky to be able to work. One must be lucky to be intelligent, physically healthy, and not bankrupted and middle-aged by the illness of a spouse. Consider the biography of any self-made man, and you will find that his success was entirely dependent on background conditions that he did not make and of which he was merely the beneficiary. There is not a person on earth who chose his genome or the country of his birth or the political... Ramachandran's big. Okay, that's very good. That's very good. That's awesome. Awesome. I'm curious to know. Tell me some of the subjects. Phantom Limb, maybe. What else? We love Ramachandran. In fact, I don't know where he is now, but last I checked, he was at University of California, San Diego, and the Neuroscience Conference is in San Diego this year in November. Not that I'm going to be able to meet Ramachandran, but it was nice to experience that fantasy for the last few seconds. There is not a person on earth who chose his genome or the country of his birth or the political and economic conditions that prevailed at moments crucial to his progress. And yet, living in America, one gets the distinct sense that if certain conservatives were asked why they weren't born with club feet or orphaned before the age of 5, they would not hesitate to take credit for these accomplishments. Even if you have struggled to make the most of what nature gave you, you must still admit that your ability and inclination to struggle is part of your inheritance. How much credit does a person deserve for not being lazy? None at all. Laziness, like diligence, is a neurological condition. Of course, conservatives are right to think that we must encourage people to work to the best of their abilities and discourage free riders wherever we can. And it is wise to hold people responsible for their actions when doing so influences their behavior and brings benefit to society. But this does not mean that we must be taken in by the illusion of free will. We need only acknowledge that efforts matter and that people can change. We do not change ourselves. We do not change ourselves precisely because we have only ourselves with which to do the changing, but we continually influence and are influenced by the world around us and the world within us. It may seem paradoxical to hold people responsible for what happens in their corner of the universe, but once we break the spell of free will, we can do this precisely to the degree that it is useful. That's great. I don't know, why are we still in the... Oh, right, I get it. Okay. Let's put that in. You want me to let you in?
Can you let me in?
Yeah. Someone let you in?
Can you take these documents so I can go away? No, I'm not supposed to.
Can you finish this far?
It may, we read that. I'm gonna read it again. It may seem...
Harris, can you unload the car?
Yeah, I'm 3 pages from finishing the book. Huh? I'm still finishing, sorry. 3 pages. 4 pages. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I don't know. Okay, here we go. It may seem paradoxical to hold people responsible for what happens in their corner of the universe, but once we break the spell of free will, we can do this precisely to the degree that it is useful. Where people can change, we can demand that they... Give me 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. I'm almost done, folk. Thank you, Fonum. Where change is possible or unresponsive to demands, we can chart some other course. In improving ourselves and society, we are working directly with the forces of nature, for there is nothing but nature itself to work with. Okay, here we go. Conclusion. And it's still too hot for me to close the window. It is generally argued that our experience of free will presents a compelling mystery. On the one hand, we can't make sense of it in scientific terms. On the other, we feel that we are the authors of our own thoughts and actions. However, I think that this mystery is itself a symptom of our confusion. It is not that free will is simply an illusion. Our experience is not merely delivered... Hold on. We're going to slow down. I'm going to close the... Alright, we're just going to take our shirt off and close the window. Ugh. Okay, however, on the one hand, we can't make sense of it in scientific terms. On the other hand, we feel that we are the authors of our own thoughts and actions. However, I think that this mystery is itself a symptom of our confusion. It is not that free will is simply an illusion. Our experience is not merely delivering a distorted view of reality. Rather, we are mistaken about our experience. Not only are we not as free as we think we are, we do not feel as free as we think we do. Our sense of our own freedom results from our not paying close attention to what it is like to be us. The moment we pay attention, it is possible to see that free will is nowhere to be found, and our experience is perfectly compatible with this truth. Thoughts and intentions simply arise in the mind. What else could they do? The truth about us is stranger than many suppose. The illusion of free will is itself an illusion. Hold on. Say that again. The truth about us is stranger than many suppose. The illusion of free will is itself an illusion. Alright, we don't have time. We're just going to underline that in red. The problem is not merely that free will makes no sense objectively, i.e. when our thoughts and actions are viewed from a third-person point of view. It makes no sense objectively either. It is quite possible to notice this through introspection. In fact, I will now perform an experiment in free will for all to see. I will write anything I want for the rest of this book. Whatever I write will, of course, be something I choose to write. No one is compelling me to do this. No one has assigned me a topic or demanded that I use certain words. I can be ungrammatical if I please. And if I want to put a rabbit in this sentence, I am free to do so. But paying attention to my stream of consciousness reveals that this notion of freedom does not reach very deep. Where did this rabbit come from? Why didn't I put an elephant in that sentence? I do not know. I am free to change rabbit to elephant, of course. But if I did this, how could I explain it? It is impossible for me to know the cause of either choice. Either is compatible with my being compelled by the laws of nature or buffeted by the winds of chance, but neither looks or feels like freedom. Rabbit or elephant? Am I free to decide that elephant is the better word when I just do not feel that it is the better word? Am I free to change my mind? Of course not. It can only change me. Last page, last paragraph. Here we go. What brings my deliberations on these matters to a close? This book must end sometime. And now I want to get something to eat. Am I free to resist this feeling? Well, yes, in the sense that no one is going to force me at gunpoint to eat. But I'm hungry. Can I resist this feeling a moment longer? Yes, of course. And for an indeterminate number of moments thereafter. But I don't know why I make the effort in this instance and not in others. And why do my efforts cease precisely when they do? Now I feel that it really is time for me to leave. I'm hungry, yes, but it also seems that I've made my point. In fact, I can't think of anything else to say on the subject. And where is the freedom in that? Great job, everybody. Great job, bad student. Thank you so much. I would not have made it all the way through without you. So let's stay here just while we note that. Or I guess we're just going to delete it, huh? No, we should keep track of our summer reading. 66. Boom. Done. And let's say we'll put a formula tomorrow. Put a formula in here so that, you know, if remaining is 0 something, I don't know. Okay. All right. Now I'm cool. Okay. Thank you very much. And see you tomorrow. See you next time. And we're gonna be just looking at some random videos, and I got a bunch of background work to do. So, but we will also spend some time reading. Okay, if bad student, okay, all right, hold on, real quick. No. Tomorrow, all right. Tomorrow we'll figure out what we're gonna read. I'm thinking that it's gonna be this one. How to Be Human. We'll figure it out tomorrow. I'll get your help figuring it out tomorrow. Okay, very good. Thank you, bad student, and anyone else.